Good afternoon, everyone. If you would all take your seats so that we could begin.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is request approval of the 2014-15 district calendar. Dr. McNeil and Mrs. Saxa.
I'll defer to Ms. Saxa. Thank you, Mrs. Graham.
Thank you, Mrs. Cranny. I am pleased to present our latest draft of the 2014-15 calendar. I do say that because the calendar goes through quite a bit of change as we gather input from various stakeholders. Usually Dr. Mussolini and I sort of work out based on last year where to begin, and then we take it through to show principals, curriculum leaders, our PLC, which includes DAEA membership. And then this year we were pleased to actually present it to the entire staff, to all teachers. And we sent out a survey to find out sort of what input they wanted to share. I guess we had several days to get that input in. We did get 28 responses, so I will go over what some of that input was. But just generally speaking, maybe we can take a minute to just go over the calendar. I'll be mentioning some of the items that have changed. If we start in July, which for us is sort of the beginning of the calendar, nothing has changed there. We have our July 4th weekend for our 12-month employees. Then we move to August. You can see the first date there is August 15th in sort of goldish yellow. That will be our new teacher induction day. I say day. We used to have 2 new teacher induction days. We got some feedback this year that the new teachers felt like that was a lot in the beginning of the year and that they really wanted to get in, get their materials, get their computers, work with their mentors, and then maybe spend more time throughout the year with periodic after-school workshops. So that's what we've sort of divided. So they're still going to get the same amount of induction and orientation, it's just divided differently. Another change you'll see are those blue dates then, the 18th through the 21st. Those are our first teacher days back to school. Now, we have had in the past 2 days. This year we had 3 days as teacher days back to school. But we are proposing an addition to that for a couple of reasons. Number one, we do know that we have several things that might be new to our teachers in the beginning of this year. Well, for the whole year, but things that you really need to get under your belt before the year starts, such as if there are technology changes because we're all getting new laptops. We may need to spend more time sort of front-loading that professional development. The same is true for our Encores. We're going to have our Rosetta Stone professional development. And so we thought that it might be good to have more time at the beginning of the year to prepare. Additionally, if you look over to your right at January, we usually have a professional development day in January. In this case, it would have been January 16th. And we usually link it up with President's Day, and then it's preceded by an early dismissal day. What we heard from people, including principals, was that that is supposed to be used as a data day, but we don't have the data yet to really have a meaningful data day at that time. And we do have the data by February, which is a well-placed day to be examining data. So we kept our February 13th professional development day, but we said, well, we need this time in the beginning of the year. People are saying maybe it's not so useful in January, so let's take it from January and add it to August. So that's what we've done in this draft. So going back to August, we now have the first student day, which is August 25th. And then we also have a holiday on August 29th and September 1st. That's a result of a survey we sent out last year where teachers indicated their preference for that. So then we have September, we have our early dismissal on September 24th, and we have our full day professional development on September 25th. This came through some discussion. We usually have our early dismissals on the 3rd Wednesday. Here you'll see it's the 4th Wednesday. And that was suggested because people found that, we got feedback from teachers that having the early dismissal connected to the full day was useful for them. That they had professional development in the afternoon on Wednesday, they sort of slept on it and came back to continue those discussions the very next day. They felt like that was a really good way to continue the professional development. So we've matched it up in a couple of places where we could, which means that early dismissals are not always on the third Wednesday now, which takes us to October, where it's not on a Wednesday at all. In an effort to do the same thing that we did in September, we moved the early dismissal to the Friday before the full day professional development, which is Columbus Day. So Columbus Day is the 13th. And so we made the professional development the day before that, which would have been a Sunday, so we moved it back to Friday. We figured this not only helps teachers sort of with that continuity, but it also helps families, because if they are going away for the weekend, it's all sort of in one, rather than interrupting in the middle of the week the way it would have been set up before. So the next item is our parent conference schedule, and that all is exactly the same as it was this year. There are no changes to that. We have, election day is the full day conferences, and then we have evening conferences scheduled, as you can see. And then our work and collaboration day, as it has been throughout for at least the last 2 years, is the day before our Thanksgiving break, on the 26th. Then we look at December. December, we are keeping our early dismissal on the Wednesday, the 10th, and our winter break is from the 24th through, I believe it's the 2nd, if that's correct. Let's see. Aha, I did remember it. So it's through the 2nd, which means we return on the 5th. Everybody returns here on the 5th. So there were a couple of comments on the feedback survey saying how much people appreciated that full 2 weeks of a winter break that we got this year. We're not able to do that again next year because of where Christmas falls. It's actually on a Thursday, so it would be hard to sort of justify being out those first couple of days. So as I already mentioned, we do not have a full day professional development in January, but we do have the early dismissal. And so as we did in October, we decided to move the early dismissal to the Friday, again, to help families and to help teachers with the continuity. February is the same as we've been doing. You have your early dismissal connected to your full day professional development, followed by Martin Luther King. Oh, sorry, that's President's Day. March, we have our work and collaboration day on the 6th, according to the contract rules, and then we also have our early dismissal on the third Wednesday, which is the 18th. You can see spring break is early this year. That's because Easter's early. So we still have our Thursday, Friday, Monday off, and then we have, oh, great, look, tax day and professional development, all in one. We're all very happy about that. And then we have May, going to May. Now, the 22nd used to be, it was a work and collaboration day 2 years ago. And then we changed that work and collaboration to a professional development day. We moved it to the beginning of the year, if you'll remember, for this year. So right now, it's a day off for everyone. It's a holiday. However, it's also the first snow day. So, if this year's any indication, we will probably have school that day, but it is still listed as the first snow day, which is why we didn't connect the early dismissal with it, because it's very unlikely that we would not be here that day. Okay, then we go down to June, and June, you can see where our school days end. That June 4th is the last day for kindergarten, June 5th is the end of the marking period, and the last student half day, and then June 8th is the last teacher day. There is a change here, though. You can see there's also sort of a light peach for the rest of that week, because what we are suggesting is that rather than embedding snow days into our Martin Luther King and President's Day holidays, we are adding them on to the end of the school year. So that suggestion was made because people felt like it was difficult to make plans in January and February. And also, when we were contracting out for professional development, we are sort of at the mercy of the vendor if they can provide trainers on the rescheduled dates. So we were fortunate that, we have had to make that change this February, but our math and focus trainers were able to scramble and get people out here. They are not the same people that we had planned on having. So this could, we could have a problem with that if we continue with that practice. So the suggestion was made to put those to the end of the school year. While you're letting all of that digest, maybe Marianne, could you pull up that other document with the comments? So you can see this is basically just that information I shared with you, but we have the feedback column has been added, and you can see some of the feedback that we got from those 28 respondents. Well, would you scroll back up just a little bit? I wanted to just point out, sorry, Marianne. For the beginning of the school year, we did have 5 people suggest that we start later and end later. And then we had some people who liked having 4 professional development days and others who said that might be too much. But we still have more that said, yes, please give us those times. We had a couple of suggestions to move the work and collaboration day to later in the week as opposed to the first day back. But as far as I understand, that is it's a contracted day, that will be the first day back.
In March, in the past, we've always had the early dismissal day has always been a kindergarten conference day. Are we no longer offering a conference day in the springtime for kindergarten parents?
So if I could address that, Mrs. Fisher, we did not have conferences in the spring for any grade levels, and that was eliminated a few years ago. But what we have done, now that we have mandatory online PSSA Keystone training, as well as other PDE mandated trainings for staff, we have excused kindergarten teachers from those trainings so that teachers might meet with parents is on those early dismissal days in February and March. So while it's not part of the listing in the center of the calendar, that's practice that we would like to continue that began last year.
So they'll have the afternoon parts of those days?
They'll have the early dismissal hours. So beyond the student day, students are dismissed at 1:30, so beyond that time.
Thank you, Dr. McKee.
You're welcome.
Mary, would you mind going back? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there another? I'm sorry.
I guess there's some clarifying things. First of all, you said this went out to all the teachers.
It did.
There's some 910 teachers, correct? About 20 of these funds.
It did.
That means people are okay with it?
The people were, okay, so this is, but the suggestions and the changes came after, or this was just, those comments were just for this particular calendar?
Those comments are comments about this particular calendar. No changes have been made yet.
Okay, thank you. And
Mrs. Simonelli, if I could add, last year, we recall when, again, the teachers received a survey about the calendar. One of the big things that was changed and that we talked a lot about were the days, the day connected to Labor Day. Remember, we had been in school.
And I think that's still there, and while that's still not my favorite thing as a parent, I am less upset about it, because I guess we don't have as many days otherwise really in the year. In the past, we've tended to not only have that day off, but then there's been other holidays following in that immediate week, where
Yes.
you start school and you don't have a full week of school until the middle of September. And personally, I don't find that to be very good for continuity for kids. But that's, again, I'm not going to fight about that anymore, because I believe in that. The other one, though, that I find a little bit confusing is what we think the value of the day on May 21st, in between an early dismissal day and a day off. What do we really think is going to happen on education with that day?
On what day, Suzanne?
May 21st.
Well, we don't believe we'll be off on May 21st. Or, well,
May
excuse me,
22nd.
22nd. We don't believe we'll be off on the 22nd. We believe we'll be in school.
We'll be using
Just-
that, because we'll be using that as our first.
This is the first snow makeup. Well, I can't imagine. I mean, there were a couple of years, and this is my 35th year. It's happened twice in the past 2 years that we didn't have a snow day. But prior to that, I never remember not having a snow day, or some weather related. Well, that's right, we had a hurricane day. So there it is. So we even had days for other things. Yeah. So I can't imagine that we won't be in school on the 22nd. But it builds one day in, and then the way it looks, for like this year, we'd easily be out June 12th, if not June 15th. But that's not terrible. That's not terrible. So if we had 6 snow days, we'd be out on the 12th next year with 6 snow days. If we had more than that, then we're going into the next week.
The only other concern I have is adding them on at the end of the year. I've heard plenty of times that once the weather starts to get nice, it's very difficult to have concentration of students. And I worry about the value of the education in those days. And that's, I like building them into the calendar. I know it's a disruption in certain types of schedules, but I don't support doing that. That's just me.
I share the same concern with the May 21st and 22nd. As a precaution, can't we just make it the 21st anyway as our half day? I mean, based on the last couple of years, we've had on the 20, we've had that first makeup day.
We could, but then you have kids off on the 21st, on the 22nd, off on the 23rd. I mean, we could do that.
I mean, odds are, based on weather this year and, what happened last year, we used that first makeup day, that we wouldn't be in school on the 22nd anyway.
She's saying move the half day to the May 21st.
21st.
Just as a
Since
precaution.
you're
Right,
basically
but
assuming
what
that
you
you're gonna
have,
be full.
what you have, if your assumption is right, Julie, if you have your assumption's right, the kids have a half day on Wednesday, and they have 2 full days, you have better continuity. So, if you move it to Thursday, then you got a half day off, back on, I think you blow your continuity. So I don't see that, but if you want to move it, do whatever you like, it doesn't matter to me. I just don't think from a continuity standpoint, that's going to help us. Again, banking is, there's no way we're going to be off on the 22nd.
There's smoothies next year.
Any other teacher leaders would like to weigh in on that?
I just think sometimes families plan, if it's scheduled, even if it's a snow makeup, if it's scheduled to be off, families plan to travel. And even if we had the snow makeup, kids would be out because families had planned to travel. But that could be at the end of the school year as well. I mean, you're always gonna, play the lotto with that, and you can't control when families plan to take their children on vacation.
But there's not that many. I mean,
Right.
we have a spike, but it's not.
Right.
We have a spike, but it's not hundreds and hundreds of kids.
Right.
It's a spike.
Is there anything that says that it's like etched in stone, that if we're getting to March, April, and okay, snow day possibility is over, and we will be on
Could
the
move it,
21st,
sure.
we move it and tell parents, we're gonna be a half day on Thursday instead?
Why not just move it to Friday?
It becomes a daycare issue.
Move it half day to Friday.
It's not a problem for the high school. I want to say,
Oh,
we need
well,
it right before the holiday.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we can move it to Tuesday to get some continuity in there. I mean, we can push it to the 13th, Jen, too. I mean, the month before is the 15th, and then take it right out of play. Push it to the 13th of May. And take it right out of play for that last week. So you take the 13th, which is a full week, it's well after PSSAs, and then that last week is either a full week or you got a day off. So everybody knows that.
Dr. Mussolini, we were avoiding the Keystone testing window, which is the 4th through the,
It's just the 13th to the 20th.
it might be to the 22nd that year. Is it in this?
Well, you're in the
13th, yes, okay, we're in the window anyway, okay. AP
APs are going on.
exams.
You're still in the window.
All right, let's put on the
Doesn't matter, you're still in the window. It's all May. All May is testing. So,
That's true.
so anyway.
Okay, 13.
Mrs. Sachs, did you have any other of the teacher responses that you wanted to go over?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, that would be great. Marion, would you mind just going back to that other document for a moment? Thank you. The next comments were about the early dismissal day. Somebody suggested late start versus early dismissal, which was, interesting to hear. I think the issue with that is because we stay later on our early dismissal days because the teacher contract allows that 65 minutes after the student day on the Wednesdays. So an a late start wouldn't allow that extra time. It would sort of be like professional development, teach, and then come back for more meetings after school, which I think might be difficult for people. If we go down to November, there were a couple of comments about conferences, parent conferences, specifically that it was difficult to do professional development in a week where people already feel stretched by the commitment that parent conferences take. There was also a suggestion to rotate who has evening conferences when, and a question about whether or not elementary evening conferences can be the same day as their full conferences, just for continuity's sake. And then a question if we could move conferences to after the report cards are distributed, which I don't think works out. If we have conferences that day and take advantage of election day, it's not going to be in line with report cards the way that is suggested there. If we look to the January, I've already mentioned the December comments, the January comments, we did have a few people who liked the idea of eliminating or moving that January PD day because it allows another full week back with students. And someone else said, yes, I like that, just can we be sure we discuss data in August because it's so important and valuable. And then somebody else said, no, I'd rather just have that day. April, we did have 3 comments that people would prefer to have a full week of spring break if possible. And then we had 3 comments saying that people liked having the snow days in June, and 1 said that they preferred that we embed the snow days earlier in the year.
The November 3rd date for the 6th through 8th evening parent conferences, is that just leftover when 6 was middle? Are we going with the middle, or are we going with the elementary, or?
You bring up an excellent point, Mrs. Brooke. We had not discussed separating those, but maybe we should. Mr. Mulvey, thoughts about that?
November 3rd, 6th through 8th conferences versus or 6th lumped with middle school or with the elementary? For conferences.
No, 6 needs to be with the elementary, and that's just an old,
Yeah, 6 used to always was with me, I don't know.
you gotta worry about times.
What
That's all.
cycle is their,
The trimesters.
are they trimesters or quarters?
Oh, for us, quarters?
Well, then I would keep them on the
Yes,
middle school
instead,
cycle.
Keep on that side.
stay where they are.
But what does that have to do with anything? Aren't the conferences all in November anyway?
What if our parents have to be at the 6th grade center and at the middle school that night?
And where?
What if they had a 6th grader and an 8th grader? Wouldn't that be difficult for them?
Well, what if they had a 3rd grade and a 6th grade? I mean, right.
The issue really is exactly the first one with that.
So I'm hearing that it could be a little bit of a conflict for parents who might have a 6th and 7th grader.
What's also a conflict if they have an elementary and if we moved it down.
Right.
If we moved it to elementary, it would have the same, you might have the
Yeah,
same
you
issue.
should run into that with hours to do.
Well, I guess this is a question for Tom, because they've always been lumped 6 to 8. Do you want the 6th grade teachers to have a full day of conferences? Or half day conferences.
Well, talk about putting Mr. Mulvey on the
Well-
spot here. Oh, my
What
goodness.
I'll tell you, if you're talking to the sixth grade teachers, is that they would appreciate when they feel like people want to meet with them and they felt that they had more requests. Is that correct, Linda?
Absolutely.
That was definitely feedback.
So maybe it should be K to 6, and they have that full day conferences.
And I think with,
That's what I think.
I think with the school, as far as, doing new things, I think the parents will want that.
Great, so it sounds like we should make that change. We'll make that evening conference a 7 and 8 day, and then we'll make it K to 6 conferences, and then the 6th grade center evening conferences at the same time as the elementary conferences.
Any other questions or comments on the calendar? I think the plan is to move this proposal to the committee of the whole tomorrow night. Okay. Dr. McNeil, we can make sure it gets on the agenda.
Absolutely, Mrs. Green.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, field trips.
Just when I turn that microphone off. Okay, we have 2 field trips to discuss. Sorry, 3 field trips, 2 international field trips, as you can see, both of which are happening during our summer months. And they involve grades 9 through 12. Both are specific to the STEM curriculum. And one is a science trip and the other is a history trip. We'll be going, yeah, I do have them both up there. Yes, okay. So both of these trips, one is to England and Switzerland, and the other will see some, as you can see, sort of all over the place. We have France, England, and Germany for the second trip. Again, both aligned specifically to STEM curriculum. And then our third field trip is right here in the good old US of A. We have our students in our life skills program at the high school level are going to be visiting Independence Hall and the Constitution Center on March 28th. And it is aligned with their curriculum and with their standards.
Any questions? We're okay to move this to consent agenda, board members? Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Tony? Yes. Okay, next, do we have any public input? Yes.
Pia DeSanto, Upper Euclid Township. I have a couple questions. Now that we have the blended classes, is it possible to relook at the gym credits and maybe take a look at how we might be able to use the blended concept since East and West have the 3 credits and STEM has the 2? I know there's been issues in the past with trying to even that out. So I thought maybe next year if we can look at some of the blended and pulling that in, like with what Phoenixville is doing. They're limiting how much of a credit they're allowed to do through PIA, sports, or marching band. And then another question. When we do the makeup days next year, and we're moving to the 6-day cycle for K through 6, are we going to do the secondary makeup where the next day back into school, they just pick up on that cycle? Or are they sticking with the elementary one? Because, my son, for example, is in elementary school and he hasn't had music for 2 weeks because of the way the cycle has worked out. So if we can relook at that, I would appreciate it. And then I have one more thing. When we move to the 6-day cycle with the specials, I understand that they're going to be losing certain number of classes that will be sliding over to the language class. Are we relooking at that curriculum? Are they cramming the same amount of work into less? Or so yes, we are going to relook at that.
So Mrs. DeSanto, yes, the curriculum leaders have been working with their departments to revise their curriculum so that the children still receive a very sound, viable, enriched, rigorous curriculum, even though they're missing classes. They were very focused on making sure that children didn't suffer with the elimination of classes. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other public input? Okay, on to program information, Dr. McNeil?
Thank you, Mrs. Cranny. So the first item on our agenda is the school performance profile report in communication with the public. So I asked Mrs. Hickey, if you would, Marianne, pull up the district website. I wanted everyone to make sure that you saw where we have communication with the public of the school performance profile. So if you're on the main page of the website, you need to scroll down a bit till you see those boxes. And within the box on the right, you see school performance profile, and you have links to parent communication. You have a video report that Kelly Byrne taped. And then you have, I can't read the very bottom one there, Marianne.
That's the video.
Okay. If I get on the page, I can see it. Oh, the video explanation, okay? And then the third link is probably what people are most interested in, and that's the link to the state school performance profile. And on that link, if you click there, Marianne, okay, so take my word for it. If you click on that link, that will take you to a page where you need to insert where it says school. Well, first you have to choose your role. We selected parent in state, so make sure you choose the right role. And then if you just go to school name and fill in Downingtown, you'll get all the schools in Downingtown, and you won't have to search by each one. All right, so you just click on the school that you're interested in. You will see the school performance profile for the particular school that you're interested in seeing, and get all the most recent data. So this is data from the 2012 school year. It will be updated annually by the state based on a variety of factors. And Kelly's just going to give us a brief overview of our school performance profile report. Mrs. Byrne.
Okay, school performance profile, which is also known as SPP, is the new measure of accountability. Schools receive a score based on 100 points with the possibility of receiving extra credit. We did have to do some updating with our secondary scores in order to get them up to date, which everything is okay now. This is for schools. Districts do not get these scores. We no longer get AYP reports for any buildings. We no longer get AYP reports for the district. We get SPP reports for the building, and that is it. Because according to the federal reporting measures, reports, that's the only reporting the state has to do. So if you look on the website, you'll see things that look similar to what used to be the report cards, and they are similar, but it's still not the same reporting that we used to receive. Okay, the next thing.
So everybody needs to get to the new lingo. You no longer make AYP. That's gone. So now you have a school performance profile report that gives you an academic score based on a variety of factors.
If you look at the indicators there, you'll see what I try to do is create a visual display to let you know. So for math or Algebra 1, based on if you take the PSSA, the PASA, or the Keystone, depending on the grade level, all three grade levels, K through 5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12, get a score for math or Algebra 1. The middle school, any student who's in math and is in Algebra 1, they will get 2 scores because they have to take the math PSA and they have to take the Keystone Algebra 1. Reading or literature, all 3 levels receive scores. Science or biology, all 3. Writing, only the 2, K through 5 and 6 through 8 receive a score for this because there is no more a separate writing test at the high school level, so they do not receive a score for that. The next thing is the industry standards-based competency assessment, also known as the NOCTI, and that is taken by students who attend the technical trade high schools, and the only grade level will be 9 through 12. Third grade reading gets its own score because it is an indicator to future success, and the state feels that strongly about it. So for third grade reading, schools receive a score only for that indicator. The SAT and the ACT is a college readiness benchmark, and the high schools receive credit for that. Now, the thing you have to know about that, though, that is the percent of 12th graders who scored 1550 or higher on the SAT or 22 or higher on any ACT test that they took while they were in high school. So it doesn't account if a kid's in 10th, 11th grade takes the SAT or the ACT, their scores do not count until they are in 12th grade. So what we report in this report might be different than what we see given to us by the vendor when our reporting comes back from those tests.
I do have a question about that though, because there are a number of students that never take the test in 12th grade. So you're
Right.
missing a whole pocket of kids. They score well enough in 11th grade, they never take.
No, as long as they take the test throughout high school, it counts when they're in 12th grade. But it like carries, like the Keystone carries from 7th and 8th grade till they get to 11th grade. This carries the same thing till they get to be seniors in high school. Right now, this year, we have, if you look at our percent of requirement gap closure, at this point, no school received a score for the achievement gap of all students because it did not count in the 2013 data. That was our baseline data, so we will start receiving scores for our gap closures starting in the 2013-14 school year, all right? And what that tells us is that schools have 6 years to make half the difference of that achievement gap. So basically, if your school had a 94 advanced and proficient last year, you have to close the achievement gap of half of that, which is 6%, which would be 3%. And then you have to do that over a 6-year time period. So if we have a 94, we have to increase by half of that difference of 6%, so it would be 3% over 6 years, which means we have to increase our scores 0.5% a year in order to close half the achievement gap in that 6-year time period. All right, so next year we would have to be at 94.5% in order to receive that score. If not, you don't get that score. It's not that they don't count against you, they do. You just won't get what you're supposed to get there, and that will hurt our overall SPP scores. Okay. The same thing is true with historically underperforming students. Those are the students who have learning disabilities, they're ELL students, or they're economically disadvantaged. Again, this did not count for the 2013 data, but it will count for the 2014 data. So we have to show improvement in closing our achievement gaps, or we're going to take it twice there, because those kids will count for overall students, and they will count again in historically underperforming students. So we have to show growth. And speaking of growth, there's PVOS. It means, are we meeting our annual academic growth expectations? And that is, did students perform as well as they were supposed to perform based on their past test scores? This is comparing the same groups of students. So we take third grade data, we take fourth grade data, and we project how they're going to do in fifth grade, and that's their PVOS projection for fifth grade. And then when they actually take the test in fifth grade, they compare the actual scores to the projected scores, and they give us a score based on that. Did we show growth? So it's very positive that you will get a very good percentage of advanced and proficient, but your growth just didn't happen, and that's where you're going to take the hit. So we have to have good growth, and I also have to have good scores in order to get good SPP values. If not, your performance did not meet expectations, all right? And it is fair because we are comparing student to student. It's not like we're saying, well, the fifth grade of last year compared to the fifth grade of this year just wasn't this, or this group was stronger, and next year it's not as strong. So we're comparing cohort to cohort. Other academic indicators is the cohort graduation rate, which is the percent of students in the school who graduate in 4 years with a regular high school diploma. And that is calculated based on 1 year prior to this data. So our scores this year were not from 2013 graduation, they were from 2012 graduation. Remember, we're back to our graduation rate, which is 4 years. From the time you walk into 9th grade, regardless of where you walked into 9th grade, you have 4 years to graduate. And if you go past your 4 years, if you don't receive a regular academic diploma, that gets counted against us. And we had that problem last year. If you remember, we didn't make AYP as a district because we had students who we didn't know were in their 5th year of high school and they graduated, even though they didn't start high school in our school district. So we have to watch those kids when we enroll them and make sure we're keeping track of that. Another issue is performance rate. This year, performance rate did not count either, because when the state did the upload of the data from the school districts, there was an error in the upload, and they could not use promotion rate as part of our scores this year. They will count for elementary schools and they will count for middle schools. The high school gets graduation rate, all right? This year, though, 2014, promotion rate will count based on last year's promotion rate, not this year's. Attendance rate counts at all 3 levels, and we did have to account for that this year. The next thing is the AP, IB, or college credit courses. That's a measure of academic rigor evidenced by student enrollment in AP courses. IB courses are basically dual enrollment courses. All of our 3 high schools had all of those things. We either order all of the core APs, we offer all of the core IBs, and we do actually offer some college credit dual enrollment courses. So each of the high schools got 100 points for that because you get 25 points for each course that you offer. Some school districts don't offer all the AP courses. They might not be offering a history course from AP. They only got 75 points for that regardless. So you get 25 points for each of the 4 courses that you offer. The PSAT and the planned participation is the percent of seniors who took the PSAT or the plan at any time over the course of their educational experience. The plan is to the ACT like PSAT is to the SAT. All right, that use some analogies there. All right. So the plan and the PSAT are the same thing. It's a precursor to getting ready to take either the ACT or the SAT. And schools are given extra credit if they do really well. Schools can receive extra credit for advanced placement on tests, and it's only advanced. Here it's only advanced scores. It is not proficient scores. The kids have to be advanced in math or Algebra 1, reading or literature, science, biology, and writing. Also, if a student does well on the NOCTI test, which is the test that tells them that they are competent to get a certificate from the VOTEX or the technical high school saying that they have this certificate, we also count that as extra credit. And the last thing deals with AP scores is the percent or 3 or higher, so it's the percent of seniors, again, who are scoring 3 or higher on at least one AP test taken at any time during their high school career. So like I said, sometimes when you see data, it's not always going to match what you see on this report because they're reporting different things. So if we look at how our schools did, there's the scores. Bradford Heights did a real nice job up there and is considered one of the best Title I schools and has earned a title of reward school with high achievement, which means it's in the highest 5% of Title I schools based on mathematics and reading proficiency levels. Shimona Creek also did very well and was the #1 elementary school in Chester County and 11 in the state, with about 1,800 elementary schools across the state, about 60 in Chester County. Bradford Heights not only did very well as Title I, but also placed 2nd in Chester County and 29th for the state elementary schools. And this is if you take a look at all our different scores, that we did very well and we showed great gains, and we did very well. All right, the middle schools and the high schools had to be recalculated because of the issue with the Keystone courses. Again, if you look at our scores here, both middle schools did very well. I looked at similar configurations across the state. Downingtown Middle School ranked about 66 and Lionville about 54th. There's about 840 middle schools and junior high schools. It all depends on how you're configured across the state. Countywide, Downingtown Middle School was 8th and Lionville was 6th with about 21 middle schools. Again, our greatest gains that we could make at this point would be at reading and science at Downingtown Middle School and science and writing at Lionville Middle School. Then we have our 3 high schools. STEM ranks #1 in the state for all schools, regardless elementary, middle school, and high school, and how they're configured. And we even saw this in newspaper articles in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, where Downingtown STEM Academy was written up in their newspapers as the #1 in the state. There are about 700 high schools in the state of Pennsylvania. Downingtown East was ranked about 26th, West was at about 54th. And if you take a look at, some different things, if we take out STEM and we take out Central High School in Philadelphia and Masterman in Philadelphia, which are the charter DeMega type schools, Downingtown, East and West would each move up about 2 or 3 places and be ranked about 24th and 51st. And if there's any questions, I did put the address up there. You can go look. It's a public site. People are allowed to go on there. They can go on there. They can find similar schools to compare how their school did to other schools across the state, in the county, in the IU unit, however they want to do that. But that is a public site, and all the scores are up there. It tells you how the calculation sheets are done. I did verify all the calculation sheets. Our scores are correct as they stand. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Questions?
So on that note, I'm going to let you continue. On that note, I have presents for everyone. These are magnets for your car. And it has D-Town. We have 16 great schools. We're ahead. Next year we will. But we're going to put it on our bumpers right now. And 8 caring communities. So we are advertising the good things happening in D-Town. Linda, you can continue. I'm going to pass these out.
Thank you, Dr.
All right,
Musley.
you bet.
I knew when you came in with that
I
box,
can't
there was
drive
a
presents for
present in there.
everyone. Everyone. Here goes.
This is like Oprah. Is there a card in that box?
For the flights.
Is it hard to come in?
You're all you are just like both of us. So I know you're good at that.
I like that.
We're going to Disney World.
You're good, guys. Yeah, everything is good. I'm checking cars tomorrow.
Okay.
So,
Put it on your paint.
I want you to scratch that salt.
That's right. That's right. I'm gonna be at your house tomorrow. Give me ice.
Thank you, Dr. Mussolini. And we'll just keep moving along
Just keep moving along.
with
I'll
more
shut up.
good news. Thank you, Dr. Mussolini. Valentine's Day, a snow day yesterday. Larry for superintendent. All right, PSAT results. All right, so, Mrs. Byrne, why don't you tell us what you're going to share with us?
All right, 2013 PSAT results. Remember, part of the goal for doing this and having all 10th and 11th graders is to have all college and career ready. That means all students are college and career ready, not just those who so choose to take these tests and take their paths. It opens more doors for students receiving possible scholarships when they're seniors, because you do need this PSAT score in order to do that. It also is our growth mindset. We want all students to do well and perform at higher expectations. That's the reason getting more students on board to do this. It's also equity. We open that the district is grateful enough to be paying for this for all students, so it doesn't matter what your zip code is or what your family economically status is. Everybody was invited to take this test and took the test. It's also about AP readiness, because the results from this test will give us the AP potential to maybe look at some kids and recruit them for AP courses. And it also has to do with the district mission of getting all students ready for the 21st century and being able to compete in a global society. So what this deals with all the sophomores and juniors at East and West who took this test, which is the preliminary scholastic aptitude test. We did see quite an increase, obviously, in the numbers of students taking this test, because we went from 1 year of just 11th graders were made to take it, and then we went to 2 grade levels are now taking it, so we did see quite an increase in the number of students who took the test. But that in turn then causes, we have to look at some other things. Number 2. This is for Downingtown East. This is sophomore participation. If you look at this, you'll see an increase in the number of students who took the test. If you look at the state of Pennsylvania in the group overall, there also was an increase in the number of test takers. Downingtown probably contributed to that, because we had hundreds more students taking the test than took the test before. So we probably did make some of that change and an increase for PA and for the group. So you have East PA schools and students who took the test, and yet you have total group, which means all students across the whole world who took the PSAT. Those are their results. All right. For this test, the points are totaled and then converted to scores ranging from 20 to 80. So 80 is the highest score you can receive on the PSAT. East performed better in the state and the total group for critical reading and writing. And East and the state mean scores for mathematics were the same. and both did better than did the whole group. And East mean scores decreased from 2012 to 2013. Just like I said, we had a definite increase in the number of students who took the test, and statistically, that you would then expect to see, unfortunately or fortunately, it's just statistically how it is, the more kids you have into the pocket you have in that situation, your scores are more likely than not going to go down a little bit, decrease a little bit, but that should stabilize over time as the students get used to that expectation. This was the sophomore participation at East as well. Again, we had a definite increase in the number of students because in 2012 we only had 114 sophomores taking the test. In 2013 we had 365 students taking the test. Again, we did see a little bit of a decrease in the scores, which, like I said, with that many more students in there, you would expect to see a little bit of a drop. Over time, though, we do need to look at these scores because over time for the sophomore group, our scores have been decreasing. And here again, our number of students who were taking the test have also been increasing for the most part, so that could have something to do with the other. The junior participation at East in the PSAT, again, there was a decrease in the number of juniors who took the test from one year to the next. The state of the group also showed a decrease. And East performed better than the state and the total group for all three tests, so woo-hoo on that. And our scores did decrease though from 2012 to 13, even though we did better than the state and the group for overall for scores. If anybody has questions as I go through this, stop me from rambling, please ask. All right, next. All right, so with the exception of 2012 to 2013 results, East results have been increasing. This is while its number of test takers has decreased for the group of juniors. We increased, and then we came, and that also has to do with, remember now we have a different number of students at East and West than we had before, because we have hundreds of students who are now attending STEM. So the numbers of test takers.
And that impacts the analysis also, because
Right.
the students that are going to STEM are proficient, so you've reduced the pool of proficient students at East and West.
Right. Good point. If you look at the critical reading over time, we did peak, and now we came down a little bit. The same thing for math, and the same thing for writing. And here again, there's a change in students, and we have more students taking it who would not have taken it before, even though some have gone to STEM, students who would not have taken it before are taking it now. West sophomore participation had a huge increase in the number of sophomores that took the test at West. Again, that's probably what caused a lot of the change in the state and the total group's increase in the number of test takers. West did not perform, however, better than the state on any of the tests, but did outperform the total group on all of the tests. So West mean scores did decrease from 2012 to 2013. Again, you have more kids who would not have taken the test any other year now taking the test. They're part of that statistic. Sophomore performance, the number of test takers definitely increased. If you look at the number of test takers across, at West, from 2008 up to 2012, we were just in the double digits. And from 2012, there were only 24 kids who took the PSAT as a sophomore, and in 2013, there were 326 students who took the PSAT as sophomore. And that is a huge increase, which then also has something to do with the decrease in scores, because the students who took it before, there were so few, were probably the most driven because they wanted to do well, and now you have everybody in that pot. So if we look at that, we can also see that there was a decline in the scores, and hopefully that will stabilize now as our groups also stabilize. The students for STEM have been taking out, and now we should start stabilizing because we also have similar students taking the test from year to year, and the big group is in there. Now we should see things stabilize in the next few years. Junior participation in West is the increase the number of juniors that took the test at West. West performed better in the state and total groups for all three tests. Woo-hoo. And West mean scores did decrease, though, from 2012 to 2013. Again, you had a very chosen clientele in 2012, and then you had a very large group. of all students taken in 2013. If you look at the junior performance, we were kind of stagnant there for a while. We did show an increase though going into 2013 for the juniors at West who took the test. Our reading scores, as we would expect, did go down a little bit, having more students take it. In math, we're kind of back to where we were in 2009. And in writing, we're exactly back to where we were in 2009. So again, that should stabilize as time goes and we have similar test takers.
Kelly, I have a question. So the number of juniors taking the PSAT decreased at East, but increased at West. So decreased 13 some odd percent at East, increased 25% at West. So we're administering the test to all students in October. What's that about?
Well, it could be the kids who have left to go to STEM, right? Is that?
It's the number of students in the population.
Yeah, that's what's probably changing the numbers.
And more students were initially taking it at East percentage-wise, I
But
guess.
it's so different for East and West. Those two numbers should be closer, I would think.
Well, you have to look at the number of, just look
How
at
many
your
juniors?
board packet and look at the number of juniors at East and West High School. You shouldn't match that. That should be the number taking the test for sophomores. Right, Kelly? I mean,
For
Right.
juniors,
that 244
Yeah,
should be the
juniors.
number of juniors that we
Yeah.
have, right?
there are more than 224 juniors, though, I know. So they're still not.
That I don't know,
we're
so we'll have
offering
to
it
look
to all
into
the
that
students,
because
but
this
they're
is just
not
the data
taking
we
it.
got at the district level.
Who's not, what do you think, did they miss it, Kurt, or did
Yeah,
they just-
I-
it was given one day?
We certainly have more than 244 juniors at West, and I'm not sure, because I believe the number of it, I don't know, my package was higher than that, so I'm not sure where I thought it was closer
Because
to
they're saying-
307.
Yeah, they're saying 223 at each.
I feel like I'm missing about 60
So
kids.
you're saying that data may be wrong?
I think it might be a little bit off.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I don't know.
Because
I mean,
it's, yeah, each number
district, yeah.
223.
The only thing you would have are absentees on that particular day, that's all you would have.
More than that.
Because the kids had to take it.
Well, East juniors was 223. West juniors is at 244.
Last year we didn't pay for juniors. So they paid for it, so it wasn't every junior taking it last year.
Yeah, but 12, 13 isn't it 12, 13? This all, don't you have this year's number? I thought you had this year's number.
Yeah, it's 12, 13.
No.
This is 13, 14.
It's just 13.
Oh, no, the data just came out.
What did we pay for?
13, 14 data came out in January.
Just sophomores last year.
Right, so we didn't pay
I
for it.
thought we were looking
Okay,
at this year's.
That's what I thought too.
It's last year's data.
That's the problem.
So we will have to update.
Right, 14, okay, that's, I'm seeing 13.
So we're looking at sophomore here. Yeah, that makes sense, because last year's sophomores were 365 at least.
Right, and the data just came out recently, so we'll have to update.
Okay, so it would be, I think, beneficial for us to take a look at this year's data at a subsequent BCC, because that's what I think we're really interested in seeing is what an impact administering the assessment to all students during the school day, sophomores and juniors, what impact that had.
Right.
Okay.
All right, this is East Junior PSAT, SAT prediction to junior SAT scores. This should be a relatively strong indicator of how they're going to do. So our mean score in critical reading was about 51, 50.7. It's a projection that it should be about 515 for their SAT score, which would put that score in the 60th percentile for overall total group test takers. Mathematics would be the 51, which should be projected or predicted to be about 522 in the actual SAT, which would put this student at the 57th percentile. And for writing, it's about 48.4, which should give us a projected score of about 525, which again is in the 57th percentile. This is West Juniors, their MES scores with their projected scores and where they should be percentile-wise. So for writing, we're at about 49.9, which would give us about a 515 or the 57th percentile. 50.8 should give us a projected score about 522. And for writing, it was 48, which should give us a projection of 525 with those corresponding percentile scores. Now, something we need to keep in mind is that relatively low PSAT scores are then followed by larger average gains and a relatively high PSAT scores. So students who do well in the PSAT usually don't show as much gain when they take the SAT as students who did not do so well in the PSAT. We usually see a greater gain with relatively low scores. Factors that influence the amount that scores change from PSAT to SAT is students' academic coursework. It all depends on what courses they take after they take this test to prepare them better for those tests. It's also the amount of outside reading, which is defined as not the reading you were given and assigned to do in school. It's how much reading you do outside of the school day on your own. And the PSAT informs the AP potential reporting, which we talked about last month. And are there any other questions?
Thank you, Mrs. Byrne. So when I read this next agenda item, I'm reminded of the Common Core focus on close reading and complex text because I'm reading the words. Demonstration of secure W-2 onboarding software for BYOD. And I'm thinking I need some scaffolding from Mr. Case to help me understand the words I'm reading.
Be happy to help out, Dr. McGinn.
Thank you.
Okay, first of all, the first word I'd like to describe is onboard. Okay, so BYOD means bring your own device, and when you bring your own device, you have to connect it to a network. Okay, and what we're trying to do with this software is make it easier for people to connect to our network, specifically the students that bring in their own devices. So currently, if you bring in your own device and you're pretty good with that device and you know how to connect to networks yourself, you don't need really that much help. But what if you don't know how to do all that stuff and somebody did it for you once and you can't remember? This software is basically going to present itself once somebody brings in a device to connect to our network, and it's going to assist them in doing that. It's also going to register them. So that means we know what devices are connecting to our network and who has them. Okay, that's kind of an important fact too. We want to be open, we want to have people connect, but we want to know who's connecting and what they're connecting. Okay, so the onboarding process is something that I bring the device, I somehow find a network, and it's going to be pretty easy, called Connect or BYOD Secure or something like that. And when I try to connect to that network with my device, it's going to take me through the process of connecting my device to the network. That means that we don't have to have open networks, guest networks that are not secure. It's very, very easy for people to connect. Let me show you a little bit how, do a demo for you, show you how it works. So I have an iPad, and I want to connect it to the DASD network. So I bring in my iPad, and when I try to connect to the network, it puts a web page in front of me. Can't do anything else. Can't go anywhere. And it's going to say, are you a visitor or are you a BYOD user? Well, I'm a BYOD user, so I click Join Now, and it takes me to this little setting in the iPad that says, I'd like to install a certificate. Now I'm going to use my DASD username and password, just like I log into every single device in the network, to attach to the Wi-Fi network. So all I have to know is my username and password. You say you're all good, click Done, and watch as the screen magically turns into the internet. Why? Because I went through the process, this is extraneous stuff here, but I went through the process of just logging in. The software that I logged into told me how to connect and basically loaded a profile and said, oh, here's how you connect to DASD. I click Done. Now I'm on the network securely. I've registered, it knows who I am, it knows what my device is. This works for all devices. Let me show you one more here. Let's say that I had a Windows laptop. So now I'm going to come in here, I'm going to find that network called Secure Guest or whatever we decide to call it, and I'm going to connect to that network, and what's going to happen, same thing. It throws a web page in front of me. Are you a guest? Are you a BYOD user? I'm a BYOD user, so I click Join Now. Now it's going to say, oh, let's see who you are first. I'm going to configure your device. I'm going to ask you for your username and password, which is your username and password that you use for every other time that you log into our network. Click Next. It's going to say, oh, that's you. No problem. I'm going to see what kind of device you have and put it in my record book. And then I'm going to join you to the network. And when you click Done, now you're on the network. Okay? This becomes really, really important, especially as we scale out BYOD and we have hundreds and thousands of devices connecting to our network. We want to know who those devices are, but we want to make it really, really easy for people to connect and have a record. So once again, this is called onboarding software. As you can see at the bottom of this, it supports everything, including Kindle Fire. So it knows, it recognizes you as a Kindle Fire and sends the right kind of information for you to connect to the network. Once again, it's basically a web server that we would host here, and it would have all the information for our network here and all the configurations, and it would push them down to those devices and allow people to more easily and securely connect to our network. This is just a demonstration, but I can tell you that there's a one-time cost of $12,000, and then we own the software for life, and then it costs us $1,800 a year to maintain. It's being used in very, very large companies and large universities and schools, including Penn State. So it's a great piece of software, but it's one way that we can make BYOD easier for everyone. So it's called onboarding software. That's it.
Are you proposing that we have this for next school year?
Yes. It'll come to the technology committee. I'd already scheduled this and built the demo with the company for this meeting before we had the technology committee. The action item to purchase this software will come to the technology committee. We'll go ahead and they're going to allow us to build a test site in the meantime anyway. If that's approved, we'll be able to light that up very quickly, and then we will go to our high schools and we'll look for groups of students to help us test it, make sure it works. Can you connect? Can you connect easily? Bring your 5 or 6 or 12 devices from your house and try to connect a bunch of them, and we'll have this all fleshed out in the spring. Now, we're not going to, the first time we deploy it, we're not going to change the other networks that we have currently. We're just going to add this one so we can migrate people over time.
Is this going to allow students to access their network folders, or is this simply for Wi-Fi access?
This is simply for Wi-Fi access. If they want to access their network folders, they can go through that through Stoneware. We're going to have an upgrade to Stoneware very soon that's going to make it a lot easier to use, take the Java out of it. But they can do that now, and kids do. They can log into stoneware.dasty.org and see their folders on any device.
What about printers?
Printers are not part of the BYOD. We cannot deploy or monitor printers, and the principals are basically trembling right now thinking of the printer costs if we were to do that. So you'll have to go to a school device.
Anticipating a greater usage of bring your own device, are you also anticipating a much larger bandwidth need?
Yeah, basically I think this got out in one of the D-links. We've increased our bandwidth already by 33% in the internet. So we've already done that. We have an agreement with ChescoNet that we can buy bandwidth increments as much as we would need to do. So yes.
Not necessarily BYOD. If you're a visitor, you bring a device and you don't have a downtown login, I saw a visitor on there, what do you do?
What you will get is a internet-only access. So if I'm a BYOD person and actually with a Downingtown address, I can access Downingtown resources, websites or whatever that are inside our network. If I'm a guest, I can't do that. I can get a path to the internet and I can get reduced bandwidth. So if a vendor comes in to do a demo and they want to just get an internet connection, that's fine, but the priority of their traffic is going to be lower than our kids and our staff.
What happens right now, and what's the difference between where we're going and where we are?
So what happens right now is we have two networks. We have one where our devices, and you probably have seen this DASD-1X, if you've ever looked in your connection. That's usually pushed down if you want to log in, but if you ever look at your networks, that's the secure network that uses your Windows password and username and password. We also have one that we are eliminating when we put this system in called DASD-WAP, W-A-P. That's an open network, and it was done several years ago to fix a certain problem. We want to seal that up so that we'll have all secure networks, but easily accessible.
3 questions. Does the login happen every time you get on and off the network?
I forgot that, yeah, this is a one-time deal. Once you configure your device, it remembers and you can just go onto the internet.
Second question, what information would you be keeping?
Your name and your device, and the MAC address, which is the hard-coded network address of your device. That's it.
And then what access would you have to personal machines?
None.
There's zero, because with Stoneware, there was conversation about,
Yeah.
when you open it up, you get.
Yeah, I'd like to answer that question. Whoever started the discussion about Stoneware, that we could go backwards through Stoneware, that's not correct. We can't remote control through Stoneware. We only offer services from our network to your device. We can't go backwards through that. So this is the same. All this is really is a registration and configuration site. And once you do this once, that's it. Unless you bring in another device tomorrow, then you do the same thing. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Case. Oh, Mr. Case, you were going to give us a brief update of the,
I can do that for her? Sure.
a brief update of the technology committee.
Yes. Get my notes here. Last Thursday, we had our first Downingtown Technology Committee. It's chaired by Mrs. Simonelli, co-chaired by Mrs. Fenn. There were 4 action items that have been passed on now to the board agenda. I'd like to update you on those, plus some discussion items that happened during that meeting. The first action item that was approved was an action item to replace the 4,250 Dell computers that are coming off lease at the end of the year with a cost not to exceed of $2.4 million. So that means that all of the Dell 5410s, that's the gray tops, that are in the carts, in teachers' hands, administrators' hands, wherever they are, if they're part of that lease, the committee approved us to replace those at the end of the year. You'll be getting a plan very soon to tell you how that's going to work. You've already been through one of the parts of the plan when we asked on that staff development day to check the laptops, to check the serial numbers, because we're trying to take an accounting, because we literally have to give those back to Dell. They own them. We don't own them. We just lease them. So we're trying to take an accounting of where all those are, make sure we have our serial numbers lined up, and we're giving them back to them. Okay? We're going to do the teacher's laptops, you'll have them before you go back in June. The student laptops, we're going to do in the summer. Just to note, there are 1,250 teacher laptops, there are 3,000 student laptops. So we're going to get the teacher laptops done in the spring, and then do the student laptops in the summer. Okay, that was the first action item. Second action item was the request to purchase 200 MacBook Airs for the STEM Academy. Every year we provide laptops to the students of the STEM Academy. The last time we did this, we bought 2 years worth because We got a really good deal from Apple, but we need another set with our incoming freshmen, and that was approved by the committee. Third, the request to approve 2,200 licenses for a piece of software called Schoology, which is basically going to be the bolt-in replacement for Moodle. Okay, so it's a learning management system. Those licenses cover the STEM Academy, the 6th Grade Center, and the Blended Learning Initiative. There's also going to be a lot of information coming out on this. There's also a free version of Schoology, which we will take advantage of in certain areas of the district. But the request was to purchase these 2,200 enterprise licenses for the 6th Grade Center, the STEM Academy, and the Blended Learning Initiative. Okay? But there'll be a lot more coming out as far as that and the free version.
Right?
Yes?
Will there be some purchasing of computers for the students who are taking the blended learning model in East and West?
My understanding, we're going to have some devices in the school for that, but it's basically a BYOD program at home. We'll have some additional devices for when the kids are in the blended part in the building.
Thank you.
Okay, finally, the request for 1,100 iPads for all 6th graders was approved, and that is going to be the device of choice for the 6th Grade Center. We wanted to get that on the agenda so we could get that rolling, and that cost not to exceed $500,000. That was all those 4 agenda items were moved on by the committee to the full board. In addition, there were a few discussion items. Meeting dates is going to be every other month, and the meetings will occur during the afternoon, just like this is scheduled here. I talked about migrating our website to a hosted site. Okay, so currently if you go to dasd.org, that's a set of servers that lives back here in this building. The thinking is that because of the importance of the website and support and ease of use and mobile and a whole bunch of other things, we're going to try to migrate that content to another hosted company. I gave the example during the meeting of a company called SchoolWire. So if you go to schoolwires.com, you can see what I'm talking about. They're being used by districts all over the country. But basically what we're going to do is take the website from being hosted here to being hosted in the cloud with multiple instances throughout the internet, so we don't have a single point of failure. It was just a discussion item, so we're going to bring back some recommendations to a future committee meeting. Talked about 2 video projects. One was the replacement of the TVs in classrooms with streaming video. We know that a lot of our TV infrastructure is 10 plus years old, coax and amplifiers and all those types of things. So what we want to do is, because we have basically projectors everywhere, we're going to take that TV content, CNN, all that type of thing, turn it into a website where you can go with your laptop connected to your smartboard and watch TV through that device. It'll eliminate the support and maintenance of all of that separate old coax network, and those TVs over time can be removed from classrooms. A lot of schools do this already. This is something that we can also put video on demand. So if you do a news program in your school and you want to put it out on the server, anybody can see that as long as you're within the DASD network. But basically, it's a 21st century replacement for the 20th century TV network that we currently have. The final thing that was a discussion item was a security project, and that talks about the video cameras and access control throughout all the buildings. Currently, we have a sea of systems from various areas. They're all basically local island systems. What we're doing is going to leverage our fiber optic network and connect and have basically a centralized solution for all the cameras, and all of the video cameras that we currently have will now connect to our data network. Some cameras, if you're in a building where it's 2 or 3 years old, those cameras will stay and they'll be kind of integrated. But if you're in a building that has old video equipment, 6+ years old, it's going to be replaced with this new type of equipment that basically has an IP address just like a computer or a printer, and it rides our data network. And that's basically the update from the committee.
I do have a question, and going back to the replacements for the teachers' laptop. My concern is you're talking about doing it in the spring when we're finishing up a semester and grades and all of that. Do you know what the rollout plan is going to be for, are they going to come in and move the stuff from one computer onto the other and then hand them the computer? Or how is that going, the rollout going to be? And just for my own, like the Microsoft is different now, right? So that's a learning curve too. They have the old system. Are we going to have some, whether it's video or something to help
Yes.
teachers?
And we talked about this in a previous meeting, as far as the training be through Atomic Learning. There's all kinds of windows and office training for that. You're right, it is a compressed timeline, but the desire was to get the laptops into the teachers' hands. As far as data conversion, we're going to be offering assistive services. We won't have time to back up everybody's data, but we'll absolutely assist people with how to do that themselves. And then we're going to basically, when the laptops arrive, they'll be all imaged, ready to go. All we have to do is name them, have the person log in once, and then it's theirs. Yeah, we wanted to make sure that we could get at least part of this done before the end of the year, because it was a big desire from everybody. We heard we'd like our laptops before we leave.
There'll be PCs.
Yes. Ultrabooks. We're looking at Ultrabooks. You have one, I think, right? This is the Lenovo Ultrabook.
Oh.
Yeah. It's a very, very thin laptop. What we've heard over and over and over, the Dells are big and clunky and heavy, and we want to. So we're looking at an Ultrabook. Once we hone in on a model number, I'll come back to this group, and I'll be going to other groups to show them what we're talking about. But if you Google Ultrabook, you'll see it's a very, very thin, lightweight laptop.
Could you, when you have the opportunity, as soon as possible, get some of that information out, like the Atomic, so
Yes.
people can start looking at it before they get their laptop?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Do these new computers that you're looking at have the DVD player and?
No, the new computers don't come with DVD players in general, especially the Ultrabooks, because they're so thin. If there's a need for a DVD player, we can certainly provide that with USB. Yeah, these are very, very thin laptops. They have full video connectors, full Ethernet connectors, full USB connectors, but not DVDs. It's just basically not coming in for those types of things.
How are we supposed to show a DVD then?
Well, there's a lot of ways.
Take the TV away, take the DVD player away, take the computer away. There's no way in my classroom I have no other way.
Okay, there is other ways. First of all, there's the USB DVDs. So if you have a lot of DVDs, we can provide you very inexpensively with a DVD player. However, the previous project I talked about where we're replacing the TVs, what we'd really like to do once that project is placed is take the DVDs and put them on our server so you don't have to worry about the device. So once that's in place, we can just take the DVD once, we can actually do this now, put that on a network, on our network, and then you never have to worry about the player again. Yeah, we own it. It would be only available inside our network, yes. Yes.
So many days lately, we've been getting the appropriate, something is not working, and, you know, I worry about that. Here I walk in thinking I'm gonna have a lesson, and the system is down. Sorry, I'm old-fashioned that way.
Oh, speaking of old fashioned, how about VCR tapes?
How about them? What's the question? How about those things?
You're going to have to buy
We will not have VCRs, and we're not taking them away so you can use them. But once again, if you have to say, first of all, is there better content somewhere online? That's the first question. But if we need to convert them, we can absolutely do that.
Convert them? Okay.
Yeah, we have machines in buildings now that you can burn it to a DVD and then copy it out.
So, Mr. Case, just to that point, these are things we need to think about because, for example, we do human growth and development at the elementary level. They're all VCR tapes. So we have to think about converting all those because they were board approved. Those are the tools we use. So,
And
okay, so this is like, okay, nothing's.
We're not gonna.
Libraries has been bought over years to support the curriculum that
And understand too, that other project, we're not gonna rip out the TVs the first day. We're not taking any equipment away. All we're saying is the TV stuff is going to be available via the browser. That's all we're saying. But you're right, we absolutely have to plan for a world where VCRs don't exist in our classroom.
Can similar things be done, I'm thinking more from the low language lens, similar things be done with like listening CDs where you can put them onto, okay.
Depending on the format of the CD and the copyright, that's fine. Usually those things that are associated with text, once we have fair use, that we can, as long as we keep it in the network and we don't send it out to the internet, then we should be fine.
Is everyone going to Mac just too cost prohibitive? Is that the?
Say again, what was the?
What was the question?
Everybody going to Mac, is that cost prohibitive? Yeah, it's about 30 to
It's
35%.
just difficult because in the 6th grade center, all the kids are going to have iPads. Then they're going to be in the 7th and 8th grade building, and they're going to have PCs. Then some of them are going to go to STEM, and they're going to have MacBooks.
They're
gonna have iPads in the seventh and eighth.
iPad plans that they're gonna.
But we don't, so I don't even know how to use that effectively. Because I'm going to have
That's a
a
different,
PC.
that's a different issue, and we're going to address that, but that's a staff development and professional development issue.
And you're a unique.
Right.
Yours,
Yeah.
right? So,
We're going to,
What do
the
you,
device
what do you
for,
mean she's unique? Everybody's in that same boat. She's not unique.
Well, she'll be going into the 6th grade center and teaching and also going into.
Oh, no, I'm working in an elementary school where I've got, thank you, I have cabinets of iPads, okay? I'm expected to be able to deliver instruction via an iPad, via Microsoft, whatever. Is anybody training me to do that?
It is frustrating.
Very, very, very little.
Well, thank you.
Very little.
I apologize.
She's not unique. We're all in the
It is
same.
very frustrating that even providing professional development as a curriculum leader, I have people that are using different devices that I,
yeah, and that's going to happen because we have a pretty diverse device fleet, and I don't see that instantly changing. Don't worry about the kids, they're fine. They can go from device to device.
a few years ago, curriculum leaders all got Macs. Then we didn't get Macs, they kept their Macs. So I don't, it's just frustrating. I'll stick to my paper.
I think the first step you need to tell the crew of teachers out there, all of them, is they need to start putting everything on the network. And I know that sounds like you probably think, well, who wouldn't be doing that? There's a lot of folks out there that are, you know, if they lose their hard drive, there's that all needs to go on the network. That's the first step. And then the transfer to a new instrument is not going to be that big of a deal.
That's exactly.
But you need to tell people that, though. Don't just assume that we're all at the same level.
We do that in the summer when we send out that letter, we tell people, back up your stuff to the network, but you're exactly right.
I mean, they need to do it now if we're gonna be pushing devices in there.
Right.
Could we schedule that as a Connect Team meeting where we like physically look at everybody's computer as a Connect Team member and say, if you're doing.
That'd be nice, but our Connect team stuff is just so packed, so
I know,
we're just gonna have to.
I feel like this is a necessity.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Case. Okay, next item on our agenda is our second update from our middle school principals, Dr. Indeglio and Mr. Ross, on changes at the middle level for the 2014-15 school year.
Okay, we were going to show a VHS tape that we made, but Ray took our TV away, so instead John is going to explain our letter.
Thanks. Thanks for the time. We'll try to keep it brief. First and foremost, thank you for all the positive support and feedback we got from December. When we came here, we got a lot of great ideas from that, and was similarly received by our staff when we presented the ideas that we had presented to you to our staff as well. The overriding theme from our staff, in addition to being excited, people were very interested and excited about the changes, but as with everything, the concern was, when and how. When are we going to find the time to do this? What is it going to look like? You know, a lot of apprehension on the part of people. We're talking about 4 major ideas and several other minor ideas, but major ideas that directly affect staff members and their day-to-day operation. That is the change to the encore subjects, going from marking period to cycle courses, the change in our world language program. That's going to be affected by the world language programs at the elementary and at the 6th grade center, the possible elimination of our exploratory program. Also the change with our digital information technology program, going to an integrated approach. And probably the largest change, and the one that affected the most people, was the change to our writing specialists, our whole concept of adding these writing specialists in order to try to address the needs that we have in writing, similar to what we do with reading. We have reading specialists that address the needs for reading. We have math specialists that address those kind of problems. So again, I'm not going to go through the whole presentation, but that was the major concerns that people have. So as we were planning, as Nick and I and our staffs were working together, our administrative teams working together, and then meeting with teacher leaders as well, you know, we began to see this picture of concern. And we knew that there was going to be concern, but there was a lot of merit to the idea of, you know, trying to build something before we really know what it looks like. And I kept hearing a message my father used to always say to me, and that's anything worth doing is worth doing right. And if we were going to go to this model, and if we were going to do it, we needed to make sure we gave people time. We needed to make sure that we gave the teachers that it was directly affecting the opportunity to have the professional development, the opportunity to create these new positions, the opportunity to have input in what they were going to look like, and establish the criteria for kids to be put into these classes, and, you know, make the changes that they needed to have. And we kept thinking back to what Mr. Mulvey and was doing this year with the 6th grade folks, and how, you know, they were creating this new and exciting building, and they were taking the time to do it, and they had the opportunity to do it. And we thought that the teachers in the 7-8 building deserved that opportunity as well. So what our request was, and what we suggested to Dr. Mussolini, and he supported, was for us to do, and he created this term right off the top of his head, to have this migration year, to have this year where we're going to be in the same buildings, but our building's going to look very different, because there's going to be a third fewer kids. Our building, for example, I'm going to actually be able to provide every teacher with a classroom that's theirs, rather than having, you know, basically 40 to 50 people a day, if not more, floating from room to room. So we wanted to spend next year establishing our 7-8 buildings, giving people their space, making some of the changes that physically we were going to be able to do, and then take the professional development time that's given to us and block it out for us, for our 7-8 building, for our planning. So we could have our English folks, for example, working on these new positions and establishing the criteria, working with our academic advisors and our administrators to determining how kids are going to get into this program. Giving our encore folks time to actually plan for having more time, which is a good thing. They were all excited, they were all happy about having the kids for more time, but then immediately they began to think, how am I going to take something that's been, you know, given in this amount of time, and now I'm giving it in this amount of time. They wanted it to be meaningful and appropriate for the kids. So, you know, we appreciated that and understood that, and we felt that it was important that we really give them that time. So our idea is to take next year to do this migration year, to have frequent check-ins with people, to get status updates as to what they're working on and what they're doing, and, you know, how close they are to being ready for the following year. Because really, it's the following year that the kids are going to actually get to us. It won't be until the 15-16 school year that we have the kids who have been in the 6th grade center, who then are in our buildings. The kids who have had the world language experience in 6th grade that are now getting to us. The kids that have had the integrated DIT program that are now getting to us. So we really felt like taking next year to plan for that and prepare for that. We owed it to our teachers, we owed it to our kids. So that in a nutshell, unless I missed anything, is the plan for next year.
Questions,
Okay?
comments?
And we'll be happy over the course of the year, as I said, to provide updates. Here's what we're working on. We can come and do a little, just like Tom did this year, with status updates for the 6th grade center. We'd be more than happy to do the same thing with BCC to provide updates as the year goes on next year.
John, you'll be working with, and I don't see Christy here, but we'll be working as part of this concept of migration to digitize the curriculum into Schoology, is that right, into the free version?
Yes,
And,
yeah, we're going to have the free version next year for the 7-8 buildings, and giving the teachers an opportunity to begin to migrate from Moodle into the Schoology program, and then if things go well, the following year we will have the full version.
Right, I mean, digitizing the curriculum is where we are with the 6th grade center, where we are with the STEM Academy, where we want to get to throughout the district, obviously. You'll be basically at a one-on-one, I'm thinking, the following year, when the incoming 7th graders come with a device, and then you and I talk saying, you have enough for your 8th graders, right?
Correct. So when the 6th graders, next year's 6th graders get to 7th grade the following year, they all have their one-on-one device. Well, what that will give us the opportunity to do will be to take the iPad carts and laptop carts that we have, and rather than sharing them amongst all of the school, we can just make them exclusive to the 8th grade, and we would essentially have one device for every kid. And we talked about ideas as to how we could do that. Could we have the kids sign them in, sign them out every day? Would we, issue them to them at the beginning of the year and get them back at the end? And what that would look like, we're not sure, but we're pretty confident that we have enough that we can provide them for every kid in 8th grade the following year.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Darcy.
We look forward to hearing additional updates. Exciting times. The next item on the agenda is the PBOS and the teacher roster verification. So Marianne, if you could just scroll to the next slide, please. I just wanted to put us in a place with what we're talking about. We're looking at the slice of the pie in the teacher effectiveness system that is that red color that says teacher-specific data. So teacher roster verification has to do with teacher growth data within the PBOS system. And if you look at the pieces, and I want to try to allay folks' apprehension about this whole system, because if you take a good look at the percentages and the slices of the pie, you see that the largest percentage of evidence for a teacher's evaluation comes from observation evidence. So those are goals you set, observations that are made of your professional performance. The other pieces have small slices of the pie. You look at building level data, which is your test data, your standardized state test data. Then you have your growth data. And then we'll talk at another meeting about elective data or student learning objectives. We'll talk about that at another meeting. But just put this all in perspective in terms of the impact on your evaluation teachers. Okay, so PBOS teacher-specific reporting. So if we're not familiar with PBOS, what PBOS is Pennsylvania Value-Added Assessment System. So what it does is it collects data on student performance, and it measures how much students grow or not. So it measures growth. Did this cohort of students grow from one year to the next? Next slide, Marianne, please. So the idea here is there is some data in your evaluation. I don't know why we're afraid. It's like kind of at the elementary level why we don't call ESAR the report card. Like there's some words we're afraid of here. it's an effectiveness system, but it's about an evaluation. So there are some data points in the evaluation you don't have control over really. But in terms of PVOS, this is directly related to a teacher's impact on students. So teachers in the past have not had access to PVOS data. Now they will. And this specific reporting is all about measuring that impact of teachers over 3 years. And that's the key. It's growth data that's measured over 3 years. So what is roster verification? So before we get to the slide, which is a lot of verbiage, a lot of words, let me say that what we are doing as an admin team is to try to get a database that is going to make it easy for you as teachers to verify the data in this database. What you have to verify as a teacher of a PSSA tested grade level and PSSA tested subjects, which are reading, writing, math, and science, or keystone subjects, Algebra 1, biology, 10th grade English literature, they're all keystone courses. You have to verify the percentage of time that you have responsibility for a student. So teacher roster verification is about your going through your list of students and saying, Linda McNeil, I have 100% responsibility for teaching her English literature. If Linda McNeil sees other teachers during, that are in that 10th grade, we'll keep on 10th grade English. If Linda McNeil sees another teacher for a portion of time of English, or in addition to supplemental instruction, then there could be another teacher who has partial responsibility for instruction of a student. This sounds complex as I explain it, but what we're doing, we being the admin team, Kelly's doing a lot of the work, as is Colleen Yenser, to provide templates that will give you percentages based on the number of times you see a student during the 6-day cycle, or a 5-day cycle for the elementary for this year. So you'll have reference tools if there are some children for whom you don't have total 100% responsibility. So those could be children who see an ESL teacher, children who see a special education teacher. In the case of a course like Math X, children who have additional time in mathematics, so the Math X teacher would have a portion of responsibility for those students if they're in an algebra, if they're in a PSSA grade level, which they all are at the middle level. The middle level gets hit with both things, PSSA and Algebra 1 Keystone. So for the middle school, this will be a little more complex than at other levels. So Marianne, if you could just scroll a couple of slides so I can, one more. Okay, right there. Now this is a little, I know I look at this and I go, and I got these slides right from PDEs. Sometimes I don't want to change language for fear I might paraphrase information that I really shouldn't. But you're looking at instruction, you're looking at planning for instruction. When you think about the time, do you plan and deliver instruction? That's the question to ask when you're thinking about how much time you have this child. So if you don't plan and you don't instruct, then you have no accountability for this child's success. Or hopefully not failure, but success. So there are windows, 2 more slides. when all of this has to happen. So you know, a lot of the world we live in with PDE is that they make a decision on July 1 and we implement the next school year. So the teacher roster verification goes into effect this year. So we need to get into the PVOS system and verify data. And what you're seeing here are timelines for when all of this has to happen in PVOS. So there's an LEA, the school district, meaning us, the admin team, would be considered the LEA. We have to make sure, and Kelly is in the process of doing this, that teachers are all in there, they're in there with the correct subjects or Keystone-related courses. We have to make sure that teachers have PPID numbers in there. Make sure you know your PPID number, folks, because that keeps coming up over and over again as a way to recognize professionals in the system. Then we have the next timeline, which is the teacher verification window. Scroll again, Marianne. So teachers will have 2 weeks, the best time of the year, to do this verification. It's important that we have the window open and that teachers know they have to be in there and get this done, because after you verify teachers, then the next group to verify is the administration. Next slide. So teachers, LEA sets it up, teachers verify, yes, I have this kid for this amount of time, I have this other kid for this amount of time. Principals then have to go in and verify that the data in the system is accurate. All children have to be cleaned for 100% of the time. So if there is any error, principals will be having discussions with their teachers about what the issue is that they see. But just know, teachers, if there is any correction, every time a correction is made, it bounces back to the teacher so that the teacher knows a correction was made and can then re-verify it. So this system is supposed to be, now we're going to test it out this year, is supposed to be very friendly to the teacher, in that since it impacts the teacher's evaluation, the teacher needs to have control over the percentages that are in the system. And Downtown Middle School did a pilot of this last spring at a very small scale. They did one team, is that right, Dr. Indeglio?
Yes.
One team at the 6th grade level. And there were wrinkles to work out, basically around underclaiming students. So for teachers whose children go to ESL or have special education services, you need to communicate with those folks. And we're going to need to make sure, which we will, that ESL teachers have a roster of students. And speaking with Maria Feist, is Maria here today? Oh, there's Maria. We did have rosters of students at the secondary level, but we did not have that at the elementary level. Correct, Maria? So we are going to rectify that, because it is by having rosters of students in the eSchool system that we can access those teachers and see the students on their roster so that we can re-verify. So then the LEA, after the schools are finished, teachers are finished, schools are finished, everybody agrees, it comes to the school administrator. Oh, I'm sorry, the district administrator. Next slide, Marianne. And we have 1 week to verify the superintendent or the superintendent's designee, which I'm sure is Kelly Byrne, will verify the accuracy of our roster verification system. So, what do you need to know right now? What you need to know, just a couple of things. One, there will be training for you. First, we have to get this database shored up. We have to make sure that our references are accurate, that they will give teachers accurate percentages for the number of times per cycle they see a child, they instruct a child. So we're going to shore that up. We're going to collaborate with the principals about the training. The principals need training. So they need to know exactly what it is they need to do. They need to know how, or recommend to us, the best way to train staff. We're looking at April, the early dismissal in April, which is the 9th gen, to train teachers. Now, recognize this is not all teachers. This is for curriculum leaders, grade level leaders. You need to know who you are, who your folks are who will need to be trained, and then who will carry on with their scheduled professional development in April. So, tested grade levels, so that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And in those grade levels, it's reading, writing, science, and mathematics. Teachers will all need to be trained, as will any teacher of Algebra 1, biology, and any 10th grade English course. A teacher of any 10th grade English course will need to be trained. 10th grade has been identified in English as our keystone year. So those folks will be trained in April. We think if we do it in April and there are any wrinkles, we have May to work through those and to come back with any additional training that we might need. So in the meantime, you need to think about teachers and have conversations about the children that you instruct. Work with your building principal. The principals have been having regular monthly meetings since October about this system. So you need to have those conversations with them about what this looks like and communicate through them any concerns, questions you might have so that we can iron those out before you actually go into the system. We want to make this as user-friendly, as simple, as stress-free as possible. Yes, Dr. Medeiros.
I would just add that for the teachers, especially, that's the easiest portion of the process. So the whole thing sounds cumbersome and stressful, but really it's just logging in and looking down a list of the kids. Most of the other calculations will be done for you and will help with the other stuff. It gets complicated after that, and like Linda said, you'll get email notifications every time we change something. So if we mess something up in the system, you'll be able to come and say, I think you might have messed something up, because it'll actually send you that. So I would just add, Linda, just don't stress about it too much.
Yes. It's difficult to stress about things you don't know about, so there's a trust factor here. So I know we can count on your being, on your communicating with us as you go through the process. That would be the most help in making it more simple. Okay, the last item on the agenda, I did want to update Board Curriculum Council about the elementary math supplemental support. I believe that I had noted that we would be coming back to Curriculum Council in February with a recommendation. However, the elementary principals are currently evaluating the supports that they have in place now, and they're reflecting on options because what they want to do is to determine which resources might bring the most cost benefit to the elementary students. So the principals now are in discussion, and they will come to Curriculum Council when they feel that they have a recommendation that is viable and ready to bring forward. Mrs. Simonelli.
So what you mean by that is that we are evaluating right now the additional supports aids versus the consideration that we had talked about at a previous meeting of potentially bringing in some kind of math coach or some other alternative to that. So I'm assuming that's what you mean by evaluating and coming up with recommendations.
That's exactly right, Mrs. Simonelli. What the principals had commented was that right now, they really have only had aides for maybe 2-3 weeks. So they want to see what that rhythm looks like. Where are they able to provide support? Principals also noted that support coming in the middle of the year looks differently from support planned from the beginning of the year. So, because there had been comments from teachers that some teachers had the aid support and other teachers didn't. And the principals wanted us to be clear that that was because we were inserting support mid-year. But in any case, they want to make a sound, viable, thoughtful recommendation and do appreciate the suggestions, but would like some time for further reflection of the options. Yes?
And do we have about a time frame where this recommendation might come in? Because if it's going to impact a 2014-15 budget, we would need to know.
And I did advise the principals that staffing recommendations do need to come in as soon as possible. So they are aware of that timeline, Mrs. Simonelli. You're welcome. We do have one very brief update, since we have a few minutes, on the math professional development. That's been a little bumpy because of trainers being ill and snow days and teacher feedback. So Jen, Kelly, I'm not sure which one of you could give us the 2-minute update on what has happened with the professional development at the elementary as well as the middle level.
Well, we arm wrestled about this earlier, and Kelly won. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, she does go to the gym regularly.
We did plan an extra professional development this week for grades 3, 4, and 5. We had a trainer coming. We're going to work some more on chapter planning, lesson planning, looking ahead, what tests look like, how do we have to teach students in order to be prepared for the test, and do that type of thing, which is something the teachers had asked for. However, we were notified last week that our trainer for this week, who's supposed to be here for 3 days, is ill and could not travel this week. And because the trainers are very busy, there was no other available trainer at this point to come to Downingtown Area School District. So we did some questioning and some asking around and really thought, in order for this to be most beneficial, we really needed the trainer to be here, because they are the experts in this program, in order to answer all of the questions and explain differentiated instruction and how all that works and how does the lesson planning work, and also work with the teachers on the technology components and trying to enrich the curriculum. So unfortunately that didn't work, so we're going to try to reschedule that at a later time. They will be here though. We have trainers coming in for the half day on the 17th, which allow us to do some of that work. However, it's not as great as right, and so we'll have them back and get that to work. It's just, a little problematic, like Dr. McNeil said, when you're dealing with trainers who go train all over the country, and you have to change your dates for different reasons and circumstances, because we had to change it then from the 14th to the 17th, and that was also a little bit of issue, because now we're not getting the big ideas trainer back that we wanted. We'll get a different one, and she's very good. She's also going to do some of our demo lessons for us. But we didn't get back to trainer we had last time, and that was the shifting of the dates that has caused a little bit of an issue. On a very bright note, I did start training the aides in Math and Focus, so half the training has been finished. Unfortunately, due to the weather yesterday and today, we're supposed to be the last 2 training sessions. We didn't get to do that, so we have them rescheduled for later this week and next week. And so far, in my opinion, that has been going very well. We've been having a good time together doing math. The aides have been very interested to see exactly how this program works, and they really said they see the benefit, and they had positive things to report that they see going on in the classrooms. They see kids with TED frames, and they see them with number bonds, and they see them doing bar modeling, and they've been very appreciative about learning more about how the program works so that they can help children. And they asked about, how do they help kids with fact fluency, and what are different things they could try. And they were just very interested, and we've been hearing good things. They're coming back and reporting what's happening in classrooms, so that I thought was pretty exciting.
Thank you, Mrs. Byrne. 3:30, and we adjourn our meeting. Our next meeting is Tuesday, March 4th, 1:30, in Staff Development Room A. Thank you, everyone.
If anybody would like more stickers for their friends, just come up on the landing mount. Favorite principal, favorite teacher, neighbor.
My son.
Your son, you got.
And his wife.
How many more? Got it. For your team, your grade level team. These are all coming to your schools, but you're the first to get it. Your school, I didn't know it was you. Always good. Short and sweet. There's going to be a lot of those. First thing to say. How are you doing?
They do a really good job.
You want one of these for the whole executive council? Yeah. Okay. Hello. I did. It wasn't in the same place, I guess because I already it wasn't in the same place. No. So when you found it, I was like, oh, it's right there. And it turned out I didn't see it. Well, I thought we had that.
So it'll be mine for you. Oh my God. Yeah, there is like that gap.
Yeah, no, that's fine.